Boxing is a sport well known throughout the world. Unfortunately, there aren't that many good games about it. Sure, there are a few, but the rest are either generic mobile games that are forgettable or lackluster. However, in 2012, there was one that was a prime contender for the best mobile boxing game of its time, and it was called Punch Hero. Created by Cocosoft and published by Gameville, Punch Hero was a game that was heavily inspired by Punch-Out! With classic arcade graphics and a simple yet fun combat system. It was a great game with a lot of potential that was only marred down from its terrible monetization system and lack of updates. Despite its shortcomings, the game left a huge impression on those who played it, as many still remember it fondly to this day. Unfortunately, its reign was cut short as it was suddenly removed from all stores due to Cocosoft shutdown. A more detailed explanation about this can be found on an older video of mine here. Then, 5 years later, after the remnants of Cocosoft merged with Ford 33 Inc., Punch Hero was reborn as Boxing Star, and it was a huge success, introducing new features, new fighting styles, a good story mode, and more. It was no surprise that it quickly reclaimed its title as the best mobile boxing game, and arguably still holds it to this day. So it's definitely a better version of Punch Hero, right? Well, even with everything new that Boxing Star has to offer, there's still a handful of people who still prefer the old school over the new. What made Punch Hero so memorable? Was there something that Punch Hero has that Boxing Star doesn't? Or is it simply just nostalgia? In this video, I'll be breaking down both games to compare them to see who deserves the title of the best boxing game. Does Punch Hero still have the edge after its short-lived reign, or will Boxing Star still come out on top? First, let's get into how each game works. Both games have the same third-person perspective and controls. Tap to throw a punch, and swipe to deliver hooks and uppercuts depending on how you swipe. Jabs are fast but are weak and blockable. Hooks are slower but deal significant damage even while blocked. And uppercuts deal the most damage and can even break through blocks, but they're very slow and easy to dodge by weaving. All of these elements play into a sort of rock paper scissors style of combat. And in Punch Hero, you can also unlock special moves that have a chance of being thrown out every time you attack, which either have increased damage or are telegraphed to be harder to dodge. There's also a special rage bar that boosts your attack when full, making it useful when you're backed into a corner or are looking to end the fight. After each match, you gain XP that you can use to level up your character stats like damage, health, and etc. Overall, Punch Hero's system is pretty simple, but in a good way. This makes it easily accessible and fun for all players at different skill levels, while still having enough to help the game retain a relatively high skill ceiling. While in Boxing Star, it expands on these mechanics by introducing stances. There are 4 stances to choose from, and depending on which stance you choose, it will determine your moveset and abilities, as well as your strengths and weaknesses. There are also 3 move slots for specialty punches or special abilities. Special abilities, or specials for short, are basically buffs you can use to enhance a certain attribute. And instead of a rage bar, Boxing Star has a hyper gauge that when filled can let you use an ultimate move called a Mega Punch. Mega Punches come in a variety of strengths and effects with multiple types of patterns. Another new mechanic introduced was Stamina, which drastically changes the way you fight, as the lower your stamina gets, the slower and weaker your punches become, forcing you to actually plan your attacks ahead rather than just swing blindly. And the only way to get stronger in Boxing Star is through training and gear. Training allows you to level up a certain stat of your character and earn skill points, which are used to unlock stance upgrades and new moves. Gear is the main foundation of a boxer as it makes up most of a player's stats. There are also 3 slots available for gloves, which lets players decide which glove combination works best for them. All of these give Boxing Star a more dynamic and customizable combat system than Punch Heroes, but all of these new mechanics can be overwhelming for new players as a result. Punch Hero had only 3 modes to choose from. Arcade mode is the typical ladder style match where you battle against boxer after boxer, with each one being increasingly stronger than the last. Zombie mode is an endless horde battle where you fight off against the undead, with the goal of racking up as many knockouts as possible. Then last but not least is League Mode, which is perfect for those looking for a challenge. You fight non-stop against the strongest boxers Punch Hero has to offer, and are only given limited opportunities to heal your character, making you strategize over when to heal up or continue fighting, with 3 different leagues to compete in. The customization is also pretty good for its time. Most of the cosmetics can work with each other, and unlocking them is pretty simple. Apart from the paid costumes, most cosmetics only cost gold that you can earn from fights. A really unique feature that Punch Hero has over Boxing Star is the ability to add your face to a fighter. This is more Nintendo influence, as it's very similar to Nintendo's Face Invaders, which came out just a year prior. Of course, you don't have to use your face, and you can basically use any picture you want, making the possibilities almost limitless. As for Boxing Star, it introduces a plethora of new features and game modes to choose from. Starting with the big 2 is the introduction of a proper story mode. An underdog story starring a cast of interesting characters, struggles, and plot twists, all leading up to the final showdown against the champion Joe King. It's by far the most interesting feature, giving players a sense of progression to become the next champion. Next, we have league matches, where you get to face players from across the world. Unfortunately, it's not a true PvP experience, as you only get to fight against a player's AI, but the game does take into account how players play, like their attack patterns and how often they dodge. All that data combined with personal gear, moves, and stances makes every fight unpredictable and almost the same as fighting the person in real time. Almost. Speaking of which, there's fight clubs where players can get together to form a group and get stronger by completing quotas and fighting against rival clubs for exclusive related gear and upgrades. It's not mandatory to join a fight club, but being in one will make a huge difference in the long run. Now, onto the extras. Knockout mode is similar to Punch Hero's League mode, as it's a challenge to battle against 20 fighters, and the more limitations you add on, the higher your score becomes. Then there's event modes where you fight an event-themed boss, which is usually complete with the mini-story. And finally, Master League is where the best of the best gather. Even if you aren't at that level, you can still participate in this mode by placing bets on who will win to earn exclusive rewards. There's also new quality of life features like hiring staff to help your effectiveness in fights, or entourages to gain a variety of benefits. One really cool feature that Boxing Star introduced was sponsors. Every glove is based on one of the 4 main sponsors. Each one specializes in a certain punch type, and when unlocked, you have a chance to activate a special ability when conditions are met. One of the key things that made Punch Hero stand out from the rest was that it didn't rely on fancy graphics. Yes, realistic graphics are nice to have, but back in 2012, that really wasn't the best time for it, and doing so will only make it age really poorly. So using a stylized approach was the best option the devs made, and the simple combat system made it accessible to all players, further expanding its audience. Honestly, the only reason why Punch Hero isn't the best now was because it didn't get a chance to be fully polished. The 3 in-game modes were passable, and the fact it was playable offline was the cherry on top. But other than that, there wasn't that much else to do in the game, especially since there was no regular multiplayer or even offline multiplayer, which is a damn shame. As for Boxing Star, it greatly improved from its predecessor with its new ideas and features, and with the constant string of updates to help keep it alive to this day. But the biggest drawback it had was how it regressed into another mobile grind. Leveling up your character, gear, and skills can take weeks to months at a time, and while it does sort of work in a sense that it gives you the experience of getting stronger one step at a time, the main issue is that the game isn't generous. Gold is very hard to come by, as well as upgrade for equipment. Resources are also locked behind loot boxes, and it gets worse when you realize that Boxing Star doesn't have one character, but several that you have to individually train and gain equipment for. I used to be an avid player of the game, and despite playing for months on end and being in a relatively high fight club, I've yet to fully max out a character. Speaking of which, the monetization is a bit scummier than Punch Heroes. While spending on the game will help you with the head start, it'll only get you so far, and you'll eventually reach a point where you'll have to spend an even ludicrous amount to keep going. And some of them are just outrageous, like how costumes can cost $30. $30 whole just for a costume. you could probably get the actual Punch-Out for less than 30. My Scout from Team Fortress 2 is worth less than $3. Why would I spend $30 on a costume I'll probably only use a few times before the regret sets in? So, which one wins? Well, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Both games quickly made a name for themselves during their debut, and while Punch Hero certainly had a lot of heart, Boxing Star was still a major improvement despite its flaws. With better gameplay, sleeker graphics, and many new features overall, Boxing Star is what Punch Hero could have been, had it not been abruptly removed. But there's no denying the influence that Punch Hero had during its short time in the spotlight, and at least it successfully passed its torch to the new generation, whose flame still shines brightly to this day, and probably for many more years to come. So, it was never really the end for Punch Hero, but rather a new beginning. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this special video, and most importantly, thank you all for 1,000 subscribers. 1,000 isn't much to some, but it's still a huge milestone for me. Everybody who has commented, liked, or even shared my videos help keep me motivated to continue making content for everyone to enjoy. There's still a long journey ahead before I can officially become a full-time YouTuber, and I hope you still stick with me. Though this was a versus video, I really wasn't gonna crown any winners since both games are pretty good in their own right. So why don't I leave the decision up to you guys in the comment section below. Which one do you prefer and why? Lastly, since it's October, I have a few spooky videos planned. So for now, that's all I've got, and until next time, take care.